Hey, what's up? This is Jake. You're in Jake's shop. Camaro update 2020. It's January 2020, and haven't got any paint on her still. For the last video there, I was pretty frustrated. Got a lot of really good stuff I've done to this car recently. Couple updates with this booth as well. So we'll get into those, and we'll see you soon. All right, Fred, looking good.
Thanks.
Ready to make a mess of the roof for me?
Yeah.
That I screwed up. Right?
No.
Yeah. That's what happens when the pro comes over. All right, we're gonna use some featherweight. This is some good stuff. All right, we'll be mixing it here in a minute. Yeah, the area up here, you could just feel it. So we're gonna coat the whole top and do it right. Otherwise, we're just gonna be chasing this dent for days. It's about 63, 65 in here right now. Does it not turn as green as the other stuff usually?
Oh, I gotta mix it up. The greens, the other stuff is greener than this yellow.
Gotcha.
But if you put a lot of hardener in it, it'll turn green. I don't want it to be hot.
You want to be able to work with it for a little while. So the idea is try and get in those low spots first, right? Kind of build it up a little.
That's what I like to do. Get it in your known low spots, which
We made known
we made.
by beating on it with a hammer. This thing's gonna look sick when we get done, I think. Yeah, it looks like it spreads a lot nicer. Just let me know if you need me to go grab anything, okay? Look at that. Because that was like half the amount of hardener I typically use.
Yeah, so I usually use a little bit more.
But since you're trying to get it to
warm
last.
here and it's a big panel.
Yeah.
If it was small, I'd probably make it way too hot on accident.
Just so it gets set up and you could get sanded on.
Yeah,
So
but you can also run into problems with pinholes and it doesn't cure faster.
is it almost more likely that would happen? Like if you put too much hardener in it, it'd get pinholes? Is there more of a problem that than almost too little?
It depends.
Because too little seems like
Too
it's
little.
way less.
And also pinholes come from the way you spread it. If you spread it too fast,
Gotcha.
you get holes. Now this one.
Now will we block this? You'll block this down, probably do one more or no? We're gonna see how it reacts.
Yeah, see how play with it because it's nice and thin coat over here. This doesn't need it.
That's just basically feathering out where that last area is at.
Didn't take it all the way over, but it's far enough for the area.
Are those the whitest spreaders?
That you have.
So what do you think dry time on this will be before sanding, like 30 minutes or so? depends on the heat.
Yeah.
Does humidity, we don't deal with too much humidity over here, right? So like, does humidity play a big role?
In the way this dries?
Yeah. You've never done body work on the East Coast or in super humid climates, have you?
The only thing that the way I guess I always gauge how long it's going to take to set up is just visual, and then like how cold or hot the shop is, what time of the year.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing it every single day.
Right.
So you know when you make something too hot, how much time you have.
Okay, here she is just before we get another coat of primer. Those were the few of the areas that need a little bit more work, and I had my buddy Fred come over to help me block down. Also this one area on the hood, it was really hard to see, but you could feel it. He showed me quite a few different things there. So just a little bit more in there. The top was pretty good, pretty flat. He did go ahead and take care of a couple low spots on it. Again, I could hardly feel them, but I did learn quite a bit when you're feeling dents, you know, kind of stand back at an angle and rub your hand flat and level with that area, and you're more likely to feel it. Whereas if you're on top of it, try and get this in a camera, or like let's say you're trying to, if you're like angled out here trying to feel, it's not as good. But if you get back on it and kind of go with the car, you'll be able to feel a lot better. So anyways, that was why there was a couple little spots that needed some attention. So we will move on. We will go ahead and get another shot of primer on this sucker. I'm gonna focus on doing a couple really fat coats on the roof and on the hood. The doors and the fenders in the side of this car are looking like glass. I'm really loving it. The hood's actually, it feels perfect. It doesn't need a ton more work, primer, but go ahead and the big flat panels, those are really the ones you spend the most time on. So I went ahead and remasked the car off, and let's get on to shooting some primer. All right, so before I do primer, I do quite a bit of blowing off this car, wiping off the car, going ahead and do a little bit of wax and grease remover. It also kind of, you're going to be able to see a lot more of the car, and if there's any major imperfections before this final coat of primer goes on. So I've heard a lot of different things about different types of wipes to use. These ones work pretty good for me. They can put a little bit of little hairs here and there if you're not careful. But it's one of those things where it's just the prime coat, so I'm not going to be too picky about it. So this car's been blown off multiple times. I don't know if you're going to see that very well on the camera, but you can see it's got a light haze on it. And what I like to do is squirt it on the rag and then just, you know, kind of wipe all in the same direction, and then get a good layer of it off like that, you know, and I can really see, you know, looking at it, when I'm wiping it, I can actually feel what's going on in there. This is just a standard spritz bottle, and I just kind of get the rag wet, and then wipe. So I'll be using this multiple times. I should be setting this on the car. And just basically go over the whole car and do that. Make sure it's clean, probably blow it off again after that. And then this I'd let flash off if you're using wax and grease at least probably half hour before you even try to attempt, in the 70-degree shop, at least that's what I'm gonna do, before I even try to attempt to spray primer. But we'll get some shots and keep on moving. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and shoot some primer on this car. Last coat of primer, at least I hope. We've got the hose stretched out here. I'm doing this as practice, right? When I go to shoot my final coat of paint, or my coat of paint, you know, laying the hose out, kind of prepping and planning how I'm going to attack this car and what I'm going to do. I've made some changes on what my initial thoughts were after just priming it, you know, on how I like it, where I want the hose to lay, how I want the gun set up. So let's go ahead and start shooting some primer. All right, one more coat of primer. Hope this is enough. Got about 3 coats on the hood, maybe 3 or 4 on the top. That fender has about 3. So everything's nice and coated, still drying. I'll leave the heat up, but wanted to prove to you that it looks like it's primed at least. All right, so to all my critics out there that are insisting on saving my life, this is an update on the booth. You know, if this fan motor, being an exposed motor on this cheap Harbor Freight fan, ever did see enough fumes and it caught on fire, it could potentially explode. There's always a risk in anything you do and everything you do. I didn't think it was that high of a risk, but heck, man, some cheap insurance. I'll show you what I did. All right, we're going to talk about this fan. I've been going back and forth on this fan. Obviously, you can see there, maybe you can see, that the back of the motor is obviously exposed. You know, there's a possibility that if this motor caught on fire or there was enough saturation in the paint booth here, you know, with fumes, it could light up, it could explode. I mean, it's very solvent. So I don't think the chances of that are very likely. I've actually done a ton of spraying in here already. I've sprayed over 1.5 gallons in primer at a time. I've sprayed about 1/2 gallon of clear at once. Lots of different sealers, and I've never had any concerns. You know, this thing's running 10,000 plus CFM. Very low static pressure, which is the drag basically, or the amount of pressure it takes to move. You know, I got to move a lot of air. That's why that filter wall's so big up there, and it's just allowing it. So there's not a huge negative pressure in here, but there's a ton of volume being transferred across this. You know, that's why I have to open the shop doors and whatnot. So anyways, but I'm going to go ahead and do a little insurance policy on this fan. Kind of like you might see like cooling brake calipers or cooling something like that. I'm going to run a vent off of the back of this motor out of the paint booth. And then I'm going to pressurize it. So here, check this out. All right, here's my ghetto setup. This is an old inducer fan out of a 90% gas furnace. I'm going to go ahead and hook that sucker up. Here's the aluminum flex that I just found laying around. And obviously that'll stretch out. And then some foil tape right there. Those 3 components are pretty much all I need except for powering this. You know, this gas furnace has come in varieties, a few different varieties. This one is just kind of more of a standard motor. It's not a variable speed motor, so I don't need any crazy control. So I just ripped it out of a old gas furnace, happened to have laying around. And then I'm going to go ahead and wire it directly with, not with that, with the cord that I found laying around the shop. Always keep a couple extra things lying around. Cords are good if they're in good condition for something like this. You're going to hot wire like me. So I'm going to wire that right in. Then I'll have a fan, and I'm going to blow air in through that. And that's going to constantly feed fresh air right to the back of that motor, so I shouldn't ever have a problem. But unless I go to like an explosion-proof fan or an out-of-airstream fan, you know, a couple $1,000s for a lot of those types of fans that move this much air in this type of an application. So rather than, you know, go some fancy high-end fan, I'm going to kind of make my own just to be safe. Alright, so as I was saying, it showed a little preview of what that was going to look like with the fan. Here it is all finished up. I've got that aluminum vent running out the back. You know, just used aluminum foil tape to tape it off to the vent. And you can see it's running through the side of my booth. So basically, turn this on, let that do its thing. So on this side of the paint booth, or on the back side, you can see the fan going out the wall there. This side of the paint booth is the clean side, let's call it. There's the vent going over to the power venter that I robbed off a gas furnace. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug that in before it gets too hot. And that, kind of dark, but get the idea, I believe, here. Those are high static pressure fans. They're made to blow like crazy against a lot of pressure. So that should solve the problem of anything potentially going awry. I'm going to test it out for a little bit here and let that do its thing. Alright, well that about wraps it up for another update on the Camaro. I actually have a whole nother video ready to go. We'll get into that real quickly here as we wrap this one up. It's going to be just on block sanding. I went ahead and blocked this entire panel out. A couple updates on some new blocks I got to try, as well as Fred gave me advice on, as well as a couple little devices that I'm using. Just a little informative one. Hey, there's one other thing coming up here in the next week. I am going to get my high school hot rod. My buddy has had it. I sold it to him about 17 years ago, and my boys and I are going to take a road trip this weekend and go grab it. So I won't throw that video up for a couple weeks or so, but it should be a fun one. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you want to keep seeing updates and different stuff we're doing here in the shop. Thanks again.